The deacons and their wives are coming from all over the world. They met in Rome in October 2015 over 3 days to recall the history of 50 years of the permanent diaconate and to sketch out visions for the future of the diaconate. They listened to lectures from international experts. They exchange ideas in workshops. And they celebrate the Eucharist without the Babylonian confusion of languages. The meeting took place a half-hour's bus ride from Rome. Until shortly before the conference began, a meeting with Pope Francis had been securely scheduled. But the synod about family took longer than expected, and the Pope wanted to be present there until the end. The audience was cancelled. So Klaus Kiesling, the president of the IDC, read Pope Francis's message at the beginning of the conference. The key message: I ask you, please keep up your effort to work for a diaconal church worldwide and a world of solidarity. You are representing Jesus Christ, who refused everything repressive. As a servant, he turned the given hierarchy of power upside down. As the deacons did not get the audience, many of them took the opportunity to visit the Vatican, albeit from the outside. These two deacons from England found a nice spot with a view. As much as they appreciate Pope Francis, there is one thing they would have liked to tell him in person.
What I would like to see is sometimes the Vatican take our views forward and what we think, because we are the people who are working with the people on the streets.
A service for the poor was what the deacons were all about, even 1700 years ago. San Lorenzo Church is dedicated to a patron of the deacons. In the 3rd century, Deacon Laurentius was told to hand over the money of the Roman Christians to Caesar Valerian. Laurentius gave all the money away, gathered a crowd of poor people, and told Caesar Valerian, "These people are the real treasure of the church." For that defiance of the Roman power, he was brutally murdered and buried in this church, where today's deacons remembered their patron. How times change. Not even 100 years after the martyrdom of Laurentius, Caesar Constantine honored Christianity by building this church, St. Paul, outside the walls. Christianity and the diaconal service spread all over the world. A few yards away from the tomb of Apostle Paul, two deacons, together with their spouses, told the story of how they became deacons. One of the couples came from Hong Kong, the other from Latin America. The great variety of how they live and understand the permanent diaconate was a good opportunity to develop new perspectives for the future of the diaconate with a lively exchange. In the United States, there have been permanent deacons for 45 years. In Russia, the Catholic Church is just beginning to think about this ministry. While in Hong Kong, due to excellent formation, the deacon is an interesting role for young people too. An important place for this exchange were the workshops, which were organized according to languages. It was surprising for deacons from poor countries to hear that their counterparts from richer countries also encounter a great deal of poverty and misery. For the wives of the deacons, it was important to hear that in the US and Latin America, wives are much more included in the education of deacons, as is the case in Europe. Equally different is the relationship between deacons and priests. Especially in countries that have only had permanent deacons for a few years, the deacons don't often feel accepted by the clerics. Regarding this issue, a deacon from South Africa had a clear answer in the final segment of the workshops dealing with the future of the permanent diaconate.
I just wish and pray very, very hard that the bishops understand the diaconate for what it was created and not develop an idea of the diaconate which is different to that which was intended by our Council Fathers in Vatican II.
I think the Diocese of Hong Kong, the last 30 years, we are very emphasized about the formation, not only for the clergy but also for lay people. We have lucky in Hong Kong, many lay people, they are very mature, and they would like to serve the church because they think the church belongs to them, not only for the clergy.
One thing I would probably summarize is the vision I have is the whole notion of the diaconate as servant leader. There's a wonderful line in other documents, the Roman document is in our national directory, that person who motivates, facilitates, and animates the people of God. So he's one with them, he's among them, he animates them, motivates them to do what they were baptized to do. And that's that notion of that servant church that has come out of these others. So being that leader to be able to do that, the deacon doesn't do everything. He's the person who makes sure those who are baptized into the faith do what they were called to do by reason of their baptism.
A novelty was the prize of the diaconate. The prize was sponsored by Bishop Gebhard Fürst of the Rottenburg-Stuttgart Diocese and is awarded to projects that combine pastoral and diaconal activity in an exemplary manner. Because the bishop was unwell, he was represented by Canon Heinz Steps. Another second prize was given to deacons in Cuba. Often they are the only ones to bring the sacraments in very remote areas of the country. Permanent deacons also support poor people with food and everyday essentials. Representing the Deacons of Cuba, Miguel Angel accepted the prize from Canon Heinz Steps. Another second prize was awarded to Germán Augusti. Together with his wife Juanita, he supports the impoverished and discriminated minority of Roma people in the outskirts of Barcelona. One more Pro Diaconia 2015 second prize is awarded to the deacons of the Archdiocese Mumbai for the project Social Diaconal Service in cooperation with the Health Promotion Trust.
In Mumbai, India.
In the Archdiocese of Mumbai, permanent deacons venture into the slums to offer means of preventive health care. One focus of the program is to educate poor people in the planting and the use of traditional medicinal herbs. It was Father Rocky Bands, director of the Health Promotion Trust, who accepted the prize, together with Deacons Vernon and Sebastian.
Thank you very much for this great initiative.
The first prize went to Deacon Laszlo Gorove and his wife Christina from Budapest, Hungary. We are convinced that a deacon has to intervene when there is suffering. We are sure that in many countries in Europe, and especially in Hungary, married people and families are suffering. Because of economic pressures due to globalization, the divorce rate in Hungary is around 80%. This is an emergency that requires help. We noticed this and wanted to help. They developed special courses to prepare couples for marriage. They included all situations marriage presents, be it to accept their partner fully, not having enough time for one another, the role of faith, as well as adequately dealing with money. They accompany the couples way beyond their wedding day. The success? A divorce rate of under 5% for those couples who attended Laszlo and Christina Gorowe's courses.
Herzlichen Glückwunsch zum ersten Preis pro Diakonia 2015. Herzlichen Glückwunsch.
Towards the end of the conference came the most impactful and powerful impulse: the visit to Assisi. The rich son of a merchant, Francis became the model deacon. For him, becoming a deacon meant focusing all his care and devotion to the poor. Because for him, as well as the religious piety of his time, the poor represented Jesus in his suffering. To serve Christ meant to serve the poor. Francis wanted to live his diaconate as a lay person. But finally, he had to have his religious order approved by the Catholic hierarchy. The small chapel of Francis is today capped by an impressive but imposing structure. And precisely in the middle of this huge church, this little chapel poses a constant challenge left by Francis. Are you really focused on Christ and assist the poor people of your time? Do you preserve the creation of a merciful God? Nothing could better recall the spirit of St. Francis than a service at the place where the Poverello lived, prayed, and helped almost 800 years ago. After the 3 days, the deacons headed home again, but not with hanging heads like St. Francis after returning from a crusade. Quite the opposite. I take home with me the motivation to make the fact that my husband is a deacon more a part of everyday family life. The kids should feel and experience that more, that there is more of a spiritual dimension in our family life.
Today's I call a new concept. Actually, we are not the bridge. We are building the bridge. We are the builder. Oh, there's a new concept I need to say. I need to be an initiator instead of I'm becoming the bridge. Yeah.
El diácono sabemos que el diácono no tiene que hacer todo.
The deacon does not have to do everything by himself. He should inspire other deacons to serve. Not everything depends on the deacon. He ensures the bridge is being built for the benefit of all.
Unidas construyan ese puente que va a ser de ayuda para otros más.
I was most inspired by the talk, the discussion about the idea of deacons as bridge builders, of connecting different people, different organizations, different needs, and connecting them together. It's inspiring to hear that, because sometimes I think the notion of a deacon and deacon's ministry is viewed typically as being on the altar, and it's not. A deacon does most of his ministry outside the church and connects it with the Eucharist and brings it back to the altar in terms of needs.
Le llevo un mensaje positivo, un mensaje de ánimo.
I take an encouraging message from here, home to Costa Rica.
Esperanza a los hermanos diáconos que quedaron en Costa Rica.
Brothers, the effort of our ministry we have committed ourselves to is worth it.
Es importante ese servicio en que Dios nos ha encomendado.